Okay, let's dive straight into something pretty fundamental, maybe even a little uncomfortable.
Hmm,
It's the simple, inescapable truth. You have a limited number of weeks to be alive.
right.
If you make it to about 80, that's roughly 4,000 weeks. 4,000 weeks! That's really it.
It is a stark number, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the sources you've shared with us, specifically on Oliver Burkeman's book, 4,000 Weeks, they make a really powerful argument
Which is?
that facing this finite reality, it's not actually morbid. It's like the absolutely essential starting point for how we even begin to think about and, grapple with our time.
Exactly. And that's our mission today on the deep dive, tailor-made just for you, the listener.
Uh-huh.
We're going to unpack the core ideas from this material you gave us.
Yep.
Like, why do we feel so incredibly overwhelmed by everything demanding our time?
Yeah.
Why does so much of the usual productivity advice seem to, well, spectacularly miss the point?
Right, it often does.
And how, maybe counterintuitively, leaning into our limitations might just be the most freeing thing we can do, to live a more meaningful life.
So let's start there. With that feeling you mentioned, the overwhelm, the constant busyness.
Yeah, that feeling.
The sources point out this isn't just a problem for like one specific group. It's something people feel across the board. Rich, poor, doesn't matter.
That sense of having way too much to do, never catching up.
Mm-hmm. It seems almost like a defining feature of modern life.
Yeah, it feels universal. So why do the sources suggest this busyness, this feeling of constantly chasing our tails? Why is it so tied back to our limited time?
Well, because time and attention are finite,
Right.
right? They become incredibly valuable resources.
Okay.
And that pressure to use this valuable limited resource, well,
Mm.
that creates anxiety.
Oh.
The sources argue that things we often think of as separate problems like distraction or
Yeah.
being busy just for the sake of it, even the way social media hooks us with, like rage bait,
Yeah.
it's all connected. It stems from this underlying tension of having finite time and attention. Think about it. If you had infinite time in the morning, you wouldn't feel guilty for wasting an hour scrolling, would you?
No, good point. That makes sense. And this feeling is linked to how we even think about time, isn't it? The sources highlight that our modern perspective is actually, well, pretty peculiar compared to how things used to be.
Absolutely. We tend to see time as this abstract external thing,
Like what?
like a series of empty containers maybe,
Hmm.
or bins moving past us on a conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And our job is just to frantically fill them up with activities. That's how the sources describe it, drawing on thinkers like Lewis Mumford.
So we measure our lives against this abstract clock time, separate from the actual things we're doing.
Exactly.
Okay, so how is it different before? What did time look like in, say, medieval life?
It was much more task-oriented. Life's rhythms weren't dictated by an abstract clock face on the wall.
Right.
They were set by the tasks themselves. You milked the cows when they needed milking. You harvested the crops when they were ready.
Okay.
The day's length was just sunrise to sunset, which obviously changed with the seasons. Time wasn't some separate entity you were trying to manage or control.
Mm.
It sort of emerged from the activities, from life itself.
So they didn't even have a word for time in the same way we do, like this distinct thing.
Not really,
Yeah.
no. Not in the abstract container sense. If you wanted to describe a short duration, you'd compare it to a specific known activity.
Like what?
Like how long it takes to recite a certain psalm that was called a miserere while,
A miserere while.
or rather charmingly, a pissing while.
A pissing while. Okay, that definitely grounds it in the physical reality of life, doesn't it?
Completely. Time was embedded in the living, doing world, but then came mechanical clocks.
Ah.
Initially in monasteries, actually, just to coordinate prayer times.
Yeah.
But crucially, then came the Industrial Revolution.
Right.
Mumford is quoted in the sources making the point that the clock was arguably just as significant as the steam engine for that era.
Wow.
Because factories needed large groups of people working together, in sync, on fixed schedules.
Ah, standardizing everything, synchronizing the workforce.
Exactly. This made time visible, measurable, standardized across society. And that inevitably encouraged people to start thinking of time itself as an abstract commodity, something separate from the tasks. It became what ticked on the clock.
Gotcha.
And while this enabled incredible coordination, huge leaps in productivity, it also cemented this abstract, measured view of time that now shapes our anxiety about it.
Okay. So we've got this abstract idea of time, this feeling of overwhelm. This leads us to a core realization the sources really push us towards, and it might be uncomfortable.
Which are?
You are never going to get to the point where you are truly on top of everything. You will never finish all your obligations and just have nothing left to do. That moment isn't coming.
This is the core truth of our finitude that we kind of desperately try to avoid. Rationally, it doesn't make sense to constantly feel you must do more than you possibly can, but that's honestly how many of us live.
Totally.
And so we developed all sorts of strategies, really, to avoid facing this fundamental limitation.
Like what? What are some of those avoidance strategies the sources you looked at highlight?
Well, the obvious one is we just try to push harder, right? Believing that if we're just efficient enough, if we find the right system, we'll eventually conquer the to-do list.
The productivity hack dream.
Exactly. We chase that mythical, perfect work-life balance, which often just means trying to squeeze even more into our already packed time.
Right.
We implement complex time management systems, like that rocks in the jar parable.
Oh, I hate that parable. It always makes me feel bad if I can't fit the sand in around the pebbles.
Right. And the sources find it irritating, too, precisely because it just reinforces the impossible goal of fitting everything in. It doesn't question whether that's even possible or desirable.
Okay, what else?
Other strategies include procrastination, which perversely gives a temporary feeling of control because you avoid the risk of failure or judgment by simply not starting the thing.
The illusion of control.
Yeah. Then there's just sheer busyness and distraction, that constant hum of activity, checking our phones. The philosopher Nietzsche saw this as a way we kind of flee from ourselves, numbing emotional discomfort.
Wow, fleeing from ourselves. That's heavy.
It is. Compulsive planning is another one. Trying to map out and control an inherently uncertain future, planning every minute.
Yeah, I know people like that.
And the sources also mention this drive for total individual control over our schedules. Like the idea that if I can just perfectly manage my time, I'll be okay.
What's wrong with that?
Well, seeking that kind of individual mastery often helps us avoid a scarier truth. That many truly important things in life, relationships, meaningful work, community, require cooperating with others. Coordinating schedules, dealing with unpredictability, exposing ourselves to the uncertainties, and, frankly, the emotional risks that come with real human interaction. It feels safer, less messy to just focus on optimizing your own calendar.
So all this striving, all this trying to cram everything in and control time, what's the actual result, according to the sources? What does it do to us?
It leads to what they call the paradox of limitation.
Okay.
The harder we fight against our limits, try to control time, try to fit everything in, the more anxious we become. And paradoxically, the less fulfilled we actually feel.
So?
We end up taking on commitments without really valuing them, just filling the containers. We get incredibly frustrated by things that require patience or can't be rushed. Our background anxiety about uncertainty just goes up and up. And that focus on individual control can actually increase feelings of loneliness.
Wow.
Because denying our limits keeps this fantasy of future mastery alive. But it never, ever delivers a genuine sense of enoughness in the present.
Okay, that's a pretty bleak picture of how we're often operating. So if fighting our limits just makes things worse, what's the alternative the sources propose?
The alternative is embracing our finitude, accepting our limitations.
Okay.
And the sources present this not as, like, giving up or surrendering to despair, but as something potentially really liberating. An icy blast of reality, one source calls it, that can actually free you.
Free you?
Yeah.
How? What does that look like?
Well, first, by accepting that you genuinely won't have time for everything, period.
Right.
You can stop beating yourself up for not doing it all, which is exhausting.
It really is.
And then you're faced with the necessity of making actual choices. Consciously choosing what few things really matter enough to focus on.
Nellie.
Knowing that by choosing those things, you are inevitably actively neglecting countless other possibilities. And that's okay.
So it's about choosing what to miss out on. Resisting FOMO, the fear of missing out, and maybe even cultivating JOMO, the joy of missing out.
Exactly. The sources make a really powerful point here. Missing out on almost everything isn't a potential failure mode. It's a fundamental, guaranteed reality of being a finite human.
Okay.
And what's crucial is that this very fact is what makes our choices meaningful.
How so? Why does missing out make choices meaningful?
Think about it. Choosing one partner in marriage, maybe.
Yeah.
Or even just picking one dish from a big menu. The reason that choice feels significant, the reason it has weight,
Yeah.
is precisely because you are explicitly not choosing all the other infinite possibilities. It requires sacrificing those alternatives. And that act of sacrifice, of closing doors, is what gives the chosen path its value and meaning.
Hmm.
The sources even mention studies like Daniel Gilbert's poster study. People were asked to choose a poster to keep.
Okay.
One group was told their choice was final, the other that they could swap it later. The ones whose choice was final reported liking their chosen poster more afterwards. Commitment, which involves closing off alternatives, often leads to greater satisfaction than keeping all your options perpetually open.
That's a great way to frame it. It's not really about loss, it's about making the chosen path count more.
Precisely. And tied to this is another key point.
Mm.
The sources argue we don't actually have time like we possess objects. We can't own it or store it up.
We don't have time.
Not in that sense.
Mm.
We are, as one source puts it, just sort of thrown into each moment as it arrives. We can't stockpile future moments or go back and revisit past ones, except in memory.
So that certainty we crave about the future, having everything planned out, knowing how it will go, that's impossible.
Completely impossible. That kind of certainty only exists once the future has already passed and become the known past.
Mm.
Our anxiety, a lot of it, comes from demanding this impossible reassurance from the inherently uncertain future. We want guarantees that life just can't give.
And that links directly to this idea of always instrumentalizing the present for the future, right? That when I finally mind trap.
Yes, exactly. It's the trap of thinking, okay, I'm enduring this unpleasantness now so that later I can finally be happy, successful, relaxed, whatever.
Yeah.
The sources see this pattern everywhere.
Mm.
In the education system, as Alan Watts pointed out, where you're always prepping for the next stage, never really arriving.
Right, grade school for high school for college.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And parenting advice that focuses solely on future adult outcomes for kids, which Adam Gopnik critiqued as a kind of causal catastrophe, missing the child right now.
Mm-hmm.
Even in popular fables, like the one about the Mexican fisherman.
Oh, yeah, the one where the stressed-out businessman tells the relaxed fisherman he should work harder, scale up his fishing business, make millions.
Right, build an empire.
So that he can eventually retire and do exactly what he was doing already. Relax, fish a little, spend time with family.
Exactly. The value wasn't only in some potential future outcome. It was present in the activity itself, right then and there.
Okay. But what about trying to be in the moment? Mindfulness, being present, isn't that the antidote?
Well, yes and no. It sounds contradictory, but the sources suggest that even trying too hard to be present can become another version of this instrumentalist trap.
How?
Because you can end up self-consciously trying to have an enriching present experience, maybe to optimize your well-being or reduce stress, which actually gets in the way of, just having the experience.
Like you're observing yourself being present.
Kind of. Like the author describes seeing the northern lights, mainly processing it as if it were a screensaver. Or there was that Carnegie Mellon study where students reported enjoying sex less if they were explicitly asked to focus on and analyze their physical sensations during it.
Wow. So the effort to force presence actually makes you less present.
Sometimes, yeah. The key insight here, the sources argue, is you're already in the moment. You can't not be. Your efforts to be present, your distractions, your anxieties, they are all happening now in the present moment. There's no outside of the moment you need to somehow break into.
That feels like a pretty significant shift from just focusing on individual control and efficiency. What other kinds of values or approaches do the sources explore as alternatives?
Things like patience, embracing rest for its own sake, and crucially, synchrony, sharing time with others.
Okay, tell me about patience.
Patience, the sources suggest, is essentially a form of surrendering to reality's own speed, acknowledging that things take the time they take, and you can't necessarily force them.
Right.
This is the opposite of that pointless impatience spiral, like getting enraged and honking endlessly in a traffic jam that you absolutely cannot change.
Yeah, futile. I love the story one source mentions from M. Scott Peck, the psychiatrist, about fixing a handbrake on his car.
Oh, yeah.
He was struggling, getting frustrated, thinking he lacked the mechanical skill, but then he realized the real problem wasn't skill, it was his rushing. So he forced himself to slow down, stop trying to fix it, and just look at the broken part. Just sit with the discomfort of not knowing the solution immediately. And eventually, the answer just became clear. By enduring the not knowing, the solution could emerge.
That story is perfect because it shows how rushing often prevents you from even seeing the solution. It maintains the illusion of control while keeping you stuck.
Yeah.
And it reinforces this broader idea that life is fundamentally about engaging with problems, not necessarily eliminating them. Trying to eradicate all problems isn't possible, and maybe not even desirable.
Why not desirable?
Because, as the sources argue, our problems, our challenges, the things we wrestle with, that's the very substance of a meaningful existence. Giving problems the time and patience they require is key to navigating life well.
Okay. And then there's rest. It really feels like our culture makes rest, especially activities without some future payoff, feel wrong or lazy.
That's that Protestant work ethic and what Max Weber called idleness aversion. It's still deeply ingrained in many cultures. Leisure became instrumentalized,
Yeah.
meaning something you do only to recover so you can work harder later. Rest isn't valued for itself.
Which brings us to atelic activities, right? I found
Yeah.
that concept really interesting.
Yeah, it's from the philosopher Karen Satia. Atelic activities are things that are valuable purely for their own sake. They have no specific endpoint or goal of completion to reach.
Like what?
Like hiking just to hike, not necessarily to reach a summit. Listening to music you don't finish, listening in the same way you finish a project. Truly being with friends just for the connection. The value is entirely in the experiencing of it, moment by moment.
And hobbies are highlighted as wonderfully subversive examples of this, almost rebellious.
Absolutely. In a world constantly demanding measurable productivity, doing something purely because you enjoy it with no goal of mastery or profit or efficiency, that's actually a radical act. The sources mentioned Rod Stewart's incredibly elaborate model railway as a great example. Hours and hours spent on something done purely for the joy and absorption of it.
Yeah.
And there's a real liberation, too, in being mediocre at a hobby. The point isn't the outcome, it's just the doing. It pushes back against that constant pressure to optimize everything.
This all seems to push us away from thinking about time as purely an individual resource, something I manage for my goals.
It definitely does. Time, the sources suggest, isn't just individual, it's also a network good.
A network good, like.
Telephones or social media.
Yeah.
Its value increases when others also have access to it, and importantly, when our use of time is coordinated in some way.
Ah, okay. Like that fascinating study mentioned about Swedish holidays.
Yes, Terry Hardig's research. It found that antidepressant use in Sweden fell not just when individuals took holidays whenever they wanted, but it fell more significantly when a large proportion of the entire population was on holiday at the same time.
Wow. So collective rest is somehow more beneficial than just having individual flexibility.
That's what the study suggests. It points towards a potential need for more social coordination or regulation of our time, rather than purely individual optimization.
And this connects to William McNeil's work on synchrony. What's that?
Right. McNeil studied how moving together or singing together or chanting together fosters cohesion and a sense of shared purpose.
Like in the military or choirs?
Exactly. Or even just working collaboratively on a physical task, like the sources mentioned, working at a food co-op. It can temporarily blur the boundaries of the individual self, creating a powerful feeling of connection. And the point is, the kind of isolated individual temporal freedom we often prize, like the digital nomad rearranging their schedule at will, might come at the cost of this powerful connection found in shared synchronized time. It can be lonely.
The pandemic lockdown felt like a very strange, globally enforced societal synchrony in some ways, didn't it? Obviously difficult, but also revealing.
It really did. The great pause, as some called it, forced this collective halt that revealed just how many assumptions we held about how we must spend our time. Amidst all the hardship, it highlighted things we suddenly had time for, like maybe connecting with neighbors or simple pleasures. And it revealed trade-offs we were making, maybe unconsciously, between efficiency and other values. Julio Vincent Gambudo called it a possibility shock.
A possibility shock. I like that. It showed us what the world could be like, even if just temporarily.
Exactly.
Okay, so bringing this all together then, how do the sources suggest we can actually do this? How do we incorporate these ideas into our actual lives, move from the theory to something practical?
Well, the appendix offers some concrete approaches, but they're framed less as ways to manage time better in that old controlling sense,
Right.
and more as ways to relate differently to our limited time based on accepting finitude.
Okay, what are some of the most impactful ones mentioned in the material you looked at?
One is called Pay Yourself First with Time. It's a concept borrowed from Jessica Abel, adapting a personal finance idea.
Pay it yourself first, with time.
Yeah. Just like financial advisors say to put money into savings first, before paying bills.
Yeah.
You deliberately allocate time for what matters most to you, creative work, family time, exercise, whatever it is, before you get sucked into the vortex of emails and other people's demands.
So you schedule it in.
Yes, schedule it like a non-negotiable meeting with yourself, even if it's just a small amount of time. Don't wait for that mythical leftover time at the end of the day because it rarely arrives.
That's a powerful inversion of how most people probably operate. What about dealing with the constant lure of distraction? Our phones, the internet?
The sources suggest embracing boredom, maybe, and using single-purpose technology. This is a point Nellie Bowles has made.
Single-purpose tech.
Yeah, make your devices less seductive, turn off notifications, obviously. But maybe also put your phone screen in grayscale mode makes it way less appealing. Use a dedicated e-reader like a Kindle for books, instead of a tablet brimming with other apps.
Reduce the temptation.
Exactly. Digital distraction thrives on our deep desire to evade limitation, to escape the discomfort of the moment. Making the escape hatches less alluring makes it easier to resist that urge and regain some agency over your attention.
I like that make the default option kind of boring.
Precisely. Another really interesting practice is cultivating instantaneous generosity. This comes from Joseph Goldstein.
Instantaneous generosity.
Yeah. When a generous impulse arises, like you think, oh, I should email that person that helpful article, or I should reach out to that friend I haven't spoken to. Act on it immediately, right then, if possible. Don't put it off until you have more time or can craft the perfect message. The only generous acts that actually count are the ones you actually do.
That avoids that trap of having great intentions for future free time that never materializes.
Right. And there's also the practice of deliberately doing nothing, which sounds weird, but
Doing nothing.
it's something taught by teachers like Shinzen Young and highlighted by Jenny Odell. It doesn't necessarily mean literal inactivity like staring at a wall. It means cultivating the capacity to resist the urge to constantly manipulate your experience or control the world around you.
Okay.
It's about letting things be as they are, just for a moment, without immediately trying to fix them, improve them, or distract yourself from them. This could be incredibly difficult for us.
I bet.
But doing it, even briefly, helps calm that deep-seated drive to evade reality. It helps you reclaim a bit of autonomy from that constant urge to do something.
So it's less about achieving some blissful state of nothingness and more about just accepting what is right now.
Precisely. And finally, there's advice from Susan Jeffers. When faced with uncertainty, which is basically always try to choose curiosity over worry.
Curiosity over worry.
Yeah. Instead of immediately jumping to fear the worst possible outcome, try to cultivate a sense of genuine wonder about what might happen. Ask yourself, okay, what are the possibilities here? This is uncertain. Let's see how it unfolds.
This all seems to tie back to that central theme we started with. Accepting limitation, accepting finitude.
It absolutely does. And the sources really emphasize this isn't about finding some magical cure for the basic human condition of being finite and experiencing suffering. As the Zen teacher Charlotte Joko Beck might put it, that suffering often feels unbearable. Only if you cling tightly to the belief that a cure should be possible, that you ought to be able to manage everything perfectly.
Which leads to that final, maybe slightly paradoxical idea. The potential power in actually giving up hope. That sounds bleak.
It does sound bleak initially, yeah. But drawing on Pema Chodron's work, the sources frame it as the empowering potential of giving up hope.
Okay, unpack that. What kind of hope are we giving up?
We're giving up impossible hopes. The hope of eventually meeting limitless demands, the hope of achieving total control over our lives and time, the hope of attaining absolute certainty about the future.
Hopes that were never realistic anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's realizing that the world and your life is already imperfect, uncertain, maybe broken in certain ways, and that's okay. It doesn't mean you're broken. You are still here, living this life.
So giving up those impossible hopes isn't despair then. It's something else.
Not at all, according to these sources. It's described as a liberation. The beginning of the beginning, one calls it. You realize you didn't actually need that feeling of complete security or total control to live a meaningful life anyway. It frees you from that exhausting, frankly endless quest to become some impossible, perfectly optimized, totally on top of everything version of yourself that can never actually exist.
And what do you gain instead? What does that freedom allow?
It allows you to focus your finite energy, your finite capacity for care and attention on doing a few things that actually count. For real. Embracing your limits lets you stop chasing the impossible.
Yeah.
And focus instead on what is, as the book puts it, gloriously possible instead.
There's one other point that really struck me in the sources about this acceptance. This idea that fundamentally there's no area of life where people aren't really just winging it most of the time.
Yeah.
Whether it's complex work or marriage or parenting, we often wait to feel completely ready, completely competent, like we have total authority or know exactly what we're doing. But that feeling never truly fully arrives for anyone, really.
That realization can be alarming at first, yes. But the sources suggest it's actually incredibly liberating.
How so?
Because if that feeling of total control or absolute authority is never going to fully arrive anyway, you might as well stop waiting for it. Stop waiting to feel ready before you truly dive into the things that matter. You're already in the water. Just start swimming.
That's a really powerful thought. So looking back at this deep dive into the sources you brought us, we've really traced quite a path. From that common modern feeling of being totally overwhelmed by time to understanding how our abstract view of time was constructed, recognizing the futile, often counterproductive ways we try to control it all, and ultimately finding a potential path towards liberation, maybe deeper meaning, and a more grounded way of living, precisely by embracing our fundamentally finite nature.
The core message, I think, from all this material really boils down to this.
Yeah.
Your limited time, your 4,000 weeks or whatever it is, isn't the problem that needs to be solved.
Right.
It's the very source of meaning in your life. Because limitation, having to choose, is what makes those choices matter. Giving up that impossible, exhausting quest to control every single moment frees you up to pour your finite energy and care into the few things that truly count for you.
So as you, our listener, reflect on these ideas from the material you brought to us today, here's maybe a final thought for you to consider, to mull over. Think about one area in your life right now where you might be holding back, waiting until you feel completely ready or totally certain or entirely in control before you really commit, before you give it your all. What if that feeling you're waiting for? What if it's never actually going to come? What would it look like? And maybe more importantly, how would it feel to simply dive in now, to embrace the uncertainty, accept the imperfection, and acknowledge the fact that you might just be winging it just like everyone else?